I had the pleasure of introducing Rich, who's an astronaut, and I was thinking, what am I going to do? How do I introduce this man who's accomplished so much? And we could go on. And I think this morning at the breakfast table, I have 3 little boys, and I got to talk about what I was going to do today. And so I'll sort of read from that script, which is, here we have a real astronaut, which to a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 3-year-old little boy is a pretty exciting concept. And a pilot that's logged thousands of hours in experimental craft and all sorts of complex machinery, and somebody who is one of Georgia Tech's own, one of West Point's own, really done some great things with his life, and I think as a father of 2 and thinking about what he's doing now, and I think what maybe he'll share with us this afternoon in terms of advocacy for others with neurological disorders, a pretty exciting thing. And so I want you to know my 3 little boys were super excited that I got to meet you today, and looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us. So anyway, I hope you enjoy the lunch, and I think after Rich's talk, we're going to hear from Jay, and Nina will start us off on that. But thank you all, and Rich, I'll turn it over to you.
One way to introduce me is to say he's spaced out. So I've been introduced that way before. It's my pleasure. I'm proud to be here at the Bioinnovation Summit. You're doing some fantastic work on shared research and product development in the bioengineering field. And the technology is getting there, and the microminiaturization is making it easier. Communications is making it better. I'm here to talk to you today about Parkinson's disease. And I'm going to influence my speech along with throwing in some space bits, some space secrets. And they're all secrets. But I had got diagnosed with Parkinson's in 1994 after my second space shuttle flight. I was a little shocked that I did it. How it happened was I had my flight physical, and I told the doctor at the end of the flight physical that something was wrong with my shoulder. I couldn't play racquetball as good as I did before. And he kind of laughed at that, and I said, no, it's really, my game has gone downhill, and I want somebody to look at my shoulder. He asked me if it hurt, and I said, no, it doesn't hurt. And that sent off alarm flares for him. And so he asked me to walk down the hall. I said, my arm just hangs there when I walk. And he said, you got Parkinson's disease, but we got to prove, we're going to take you downtown to a neurologist tomorrow in Houston, Baylor College of Medicine, and we're going to check you out. The doctor looked at me for 5 minutes there and said, you've got Parkinson's disease. I said, okay, you're the second person to say that, but what gives? What is it, and what do I do with it? And I was unaware of what Parkinson's was at that time. But they had to run me through all these tests to make sure that it wasn't something else. And I'm thinking, okay, what else could be out there? MS, brain tumors, things like that. So they poked and probed every hole in my body and finally came back and said, well, you've got Parkinson's disease, and we're telling NASA. I thought it was the end of my career at that time. But NASA asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, well, if it's up to me, I want to fly again. And so they said, well, if you maintain your qualifications, we'll continue to consider you for flying. It surprised me that they did that. And at the time being, they didn't tell me I had to keep it a secret, but they also said, you don't have to tell anybody that you have it. This was the NASA management, particularly the flight surgeon's office, the medical certification people, the people that had to say he's qualified for space flight medically. So I kept it a secret, and I kept it a secret for 17 years. And I didn't have much symptomatic symptoms. I moved slowly a little bit, but really my arm just hangs there when I walk. And so 3 months after that, they assigned me to a new flight, mission to the space station Mir. We were going to dock with the space station and do a spacewalk on the mission. It was a fantastic opportunity. When I got assigned to that mission, I was excited about it. I was flying with 2 of the same crew members I had on my previous flight. And it was doing a spacewalk was my goal. I'd done all the research and development effort. on the tools and equipment that we're going to use for this, installing these experiment packages on the Mir space station. And I didn't get assigned the EVA, the Spacewalk. I went back to the management and I said, what gives here? I'm qualified for flight, but I'm not qualified to do the Spacewalk that I've done all the development work on. They looked at me and said, but you have Parkinson's disease. I said, well, if that's going to stop me from doing this, why does it stop me from doing the flight? So they gave me the Spacewalk also. And that was fun. Being your own little satellite out there is fantastic. But you got to get there first. You got to get up on the launch and move on. Launches are exhilarating. It's nothing like a controlled explosion to get you going somewhere. And you just sit on the launch pad in a suit for up to 4.5 hours on your back. And it's uncomfortable because you got a suit that's partial pressure. It's a rubber garment basically with Teflon outside. It's meant to protect you should you bail out in the North Atlantic Ocean in the middle of winter. Keep you alive. So it keeps you hot and you sweat a lot in it. And it's got these two oxygen bottles on the side of them. And so they got those bottles pressing up against you on a hard steel seat, and you're on your back. And it's okay, it's the best way the G-forces are going to get you, but it's uncomfortable. And you don't want to move. To get you into your seat, you crawl into the vehicle on the side. You have two gorillas inside that throw you up into your seat and strap you in. And I'm on the mid-deck of this shuttle on my first flight. And the walls are in front of me right just there. I can reach out and touch the walls, but the ceiling, which is the rear wall, because you're rotating 90 degrees, was way down there. I couldn't get out of my seat to get onto that wall without falling out. And if I fell out of the seat, I couldn't get back into it, and then I'd be embarrassed. And it'd stop the launch, because I don't think I could ride on the back wall. But it was uncomfortable. We were there for 4.5 hours. And 4.5 hours, it's hard to hold your bladder that long, especially when you get the boost of the rockets. So waiting there when I picked up the count, 6.5 seconds, the main engine's ignited in sequence. They're burning liquid fuel and oxidizer. And it's smooth. There's a lot of noise from them, but you're not feeling any shaking. The liquid engines are very smooth. And because the shuttle's sitting vertical on the pad, the engines are off the back of the shuttle. And we're held to the pad by the solid rocket motors, which are attached to the side of the external tank, the big fuel tank. And so when the engines ignite, it pushes the whole stack about 15 degrees forward. And it springs back. It's held on the pad by 8 large bolts holding those solid rocket motors down. And as it comes back through the vertical, boom, the solid rocket motors ignite. And then you realize you're just along for the ride. Because it's 7.5 million pounds of thrust pushing the vehicle that weighs around 4.7 million pounds. 1.5 Gs immediately, and it's rumble and rolls. It makes a lot of noise, and you know you're not in control of it. So thank God for all the scientists out there that designed that rocket to work right. And I thank them every day that I fly. But it takes you up to 200,000 feet in 2 minutes. The solid rocket motors burn out of gas and we blow them away. And there you're thrust forward in your seat because your thrust level changes from 7.5 million pounds to 1.5 million pounds. And you ride that 1.5 million pounds of thrust for the next 6.5 minutes, changing your velocity to 17,500 miles an hour. That's 5 miles a second over the ground. And it's really moving. And when you look out the windows, you can see how fast you're moving. Go from Cuba to Nova Scotia in 5 minutes. That's a great trip. And the east coast of the United States is wonderful. But when you're looking at the Earth, you're just looking at gray smudges, brown and green, and a lot of white and blue. Blue, obviously, is the water. White is the clouds. Gray smudges are cities. And you can't really make out anything but the train. You're 160 miles away from it, so you can imagine what you can see. And then you're traveling at 5 miles a second over it. New York City you can make out well because you see the harbors and Long Island and everything. but you can't see any structure. You can't see the Empire State Building. Can't see the Twin Towers. Well, you can't see them now anyway, but you see contrasts. So you can tell that there's something big down there if the sun's at an angle where it's casting a long shadow. Then you see the shadow, but you don't see the structure that you're looking at. It's important that, because people said they've seen the Great Wall of China. Well, you've seen it because it's down there, but you haven't seen it because you can't see it, you can't make it out. Even you've seen it because you know where it is, and you know the rivers that are next to it. You can pick out the rivers. The sun glint is great. Again, the sun reflects off the water, and it allows you to pick out the major, any water is fantastic. And the Great Wall of China is there, but it's not a contrast because it's curved. It blends in with the landscape. And even with shadows, I don't think you can see the Great Wall of China. Although some of my friends have said they've seen it, I think they've seen something in their head. So, but viewing the Earth is fantastic. Get along to the Spacewalk. That was on day 4 of the mission up to Mir. Let me take a step back and tell you about the docking of the Mir. Our mission was to dock to the Mir station. Nobody had docked to it before. Docking is when you fly into it and you mate up with another object up there. The extension module, a 30-foot extension module, was installed on the Mir on the previous flight. They got close to Mir, and then they used a shuttle robot arm to berth this module with them. That put a 30-foot extension on there for us to come up and dock to it. So you're both flying 17,500 miles an hour, and you're doing this dance where up here is the receiving vehicle, we're below it, and we're flying up to it at an inch per second about. And you got to be very accurate on this, because whenever you fire your engines, the little thrusters, 7.5-pound thrusters moving a vehicle that weighs 200,000 pounds. It doesn't put a whole lot of force on it, but it does move you quite a bit. And when you fire your engines in the direction of travel, you increase your velocity a little bit, which gives you an increased altitude. Very minimal, but it does affect it. And so you come up with this dance of space, and you're looking at a target that looks like a T, and you're aiming to keep that T straight, and you can see the boundaries of it. But it's when you dock, you're punching another vehicle in the face, and it's got springs on it that hold it together, and then you tighten it down. You tighten the screws and get it together. When we showed up at the Mir, we had met the Russian crew members. We trained with them a little bit, Yuliana Franco and Yuri Usachev. And they were, Yuri Usachev, it was his 4th flight, so he was pretty much an expert at this. Yuliana Franco was the commander of the Russian flight, and he hadn't flown before. All our pre-flight training, Yuri Usachev was smiling all the time. Yuliana Franco was just frowning. He just didn't look like he was having a good time. When we got up into space, they'd been up there 30 days already. He opened the hatch between the two vehicles. Yuliana Franco came out with the biggest grin on his face you could imagine, because he'd been there. He knew he could do it now. We figured it out later that he was leery to tell us about a pre-flight because he hadn't flown. You don't know what your reaction is going to be to flight. But he had this big grin on his face and said, "Welcome to my spacecraft." So that was neat. Then we closed the door and told him to go home. But we had to close the hatch to get to the spacewalk, and that's a fantastic experience. When you get up there and you open the hatch to the outside, and every time you touch something in microgravity or zero gravity, you move away from it. It's the conservation of momentum, linear and angular, conservation of energy, conservation of mass, all plays true out there. Don't believe what you see in the gravity film. It's not that easy. But you got these handrails that you crawl around on, and when I pull myself out of the module, I'm grabbing this handrail and I'm holding it firmly because I don't want to fall off. My biggest fear in space was doing something wrong in front of the TV cameras. And all the danger didn't matter, but doing something wrong where you got bloopers on you is really bad. And so I pulled my hand out, I grabbed a hold of the handrail, and because I had a force at this distance, a moment arm distance from my center of gravity, I did a porpoising effect. And it didn't play off in my mind that I was holding it too hard, I was creating too large a force. Because in the water tanks where we train, you got to hold on because you streamline yourself in the water. It helps you stabilize. There's no stabilization up there. So to stop myself from having that porpoise effect, I grabbed the lower part of the handrail with my other hand, and that made it worse. I was doing a double trick. And the TV camera wasn't running yet. They gave us a chance to get outside first. And then I realized I just had to barely touch it to hold on to it. And I could move in the suit I weigh 350 pounds. A couple hundred pounds on it. But you just barely touch it and you move. And the faster you go, the worse you make it. Going slow in space on a spacewalk is the way to do it because you're most efficient. You only have to do things once. I think you can imagine that the faster you're going, the harder you have to grab something to stop it, or you're going to run into something. If you run into it, it's going to hit your head or your helmet, and you're going to bounce off it, and then you don't know what you're doing. All the gravity, you tumble out of it. But it's neat. The spacewalk was successful. We installed 5 experiment packages on the external tank of the mirror, external side of the mirror, and they're called mirror environmental effects payloads. They're measuring the debris up there in the environment that we fly in typically. Gels and styrofoam, and we oriented them in certain positions so that they could tell the velocity vector coming in there and pick out the debris. But that was neat. Entry is a little bit opposite of the launch. It's a smooth experience, and you're coming back in slowing down from 17,500 miles an hour to landing speeds of around 250 miles an hour. You burn your engines about 3/4 of the way around the Earth from where your intended landing spot is, and it slows you down by 200 miles an hour, and you're just a falling rock coming back into the Earth's atmosphere. The shuttle slows down by friction, the atmosphere, and it's smooth. I mean, it gets hot outside, but it's smooth inside. And coming up and landing, when we reach what we call a head-in alignment circle intercept, the runway is out there, and you're looking down at a 30-degree nose down attitude. And you've never been in a 30 degrees nose down attitude in a commercial airplane, because they can't go there. It's typically 5 degrees nose down on the approach. 30 degrees nose down, you're looking at the ground like that. And your feeling is, shouldn't that be farther away? And you're just pointing to that spot, and the energy management is there. And my first thought was, I hope he knows when to pull up. So I was in the flight engineer seat, trusting my commander to pull up when he should. And he just pulls up and lands on the runway. And you hit the runway fast because those little tiny wings on the shuttle don't produce a whole lot of lift. And when you bring the nose down, it's really a rocket down effect. It knocks you down. And you're thrown forward in the seat, and all your attributes for zero gravity accumulation have gone. I'll tell you this one thing: when you get out of the shuttle after landing, you walk straight. You don't turn your head because your vestibular organs are all messed up. And if you walk like this and turn your head, you're going to roll, and because the balance mechanism isn't there. And so we always walk straight lines coming out of the shuttle. And again, if you don't, you look bad on TV. Okay. That's good. I've run out of time, but I want to tell you that Parkinson's disease it advances. I'm getting worse, but I kept it a secret for 17 years because I didn't want the press to question me during the mission about Parkinson's disease. The focus of the press conference should be on the mission, not on me. And when I finished working for NASA, I joined Boeing in the space station program. I helped build it, design it, and that was a special time. But Parkinson's disease has been with me for 20 years now. I'm doing fine. I hope I do fine for a long time, but it's up to you to find a cause of this. Your research should be leading toward what causes Parkinson's disease. And the treatment options are out there. They tend to work good. The drugs work well. They wear off on you, but Parkinson's disease has got to be solved. But we've got to know the cause of it to find the cure. Thank you.